Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Rock with my review of Fantasy Island. So, what, pray tell, is Fantasy Island about? Well, it's a horror-adjacent update of the 1970s TV show. The TV show it was also a early 2000s version of the show. The 70s version starred Ricardo Montalban as Mr. Rourke, who ran this resort known as Fantasy Island, and every week new people would a new group of people would show up and live out fantasies on the island. Presumably hijinks would ensue. The early 2000s version, instead of Ricardo Montalban as Mr. Rourke, featured Malcolm McDowell as Mr. Rourke, and again, every week, new group of people coming, hijinks ensue. This, however, is more, like I said, it's a horror-adjacent update. I wouldn't necessarily call it horror, but I can definitely see how some might call it horror. There are definitely horror elements, for example. So, quick takes. It's an interesting take on the concept, honestly. It really is. While there are good members of the cast, and to be fair, I would honestly say the bigger names are actually do a better job in their roles. The not as big names, not so much. They're not bad. It's just kind of they're not great. Also, some of the visual effects on a large scale don't look all that great. So yeah. Anywho, so we're actually going to do this review a little bit differently from how we normally do. Rather than go through the cast and then have the spoiler-free breakdown, what I'll instead be doing, I'll go over the cast and with the primary characters explain their fantasy, at least go into what their fantasy is. Because once you get into after how the fantasy plays out, I think would be giving how each fantasy plays out. I think would be giving too much away. So first off, we got Michael Pena as Mr. Rourke. He's the man in charge of Fantasy Island. He also has a tendency to speak cryptically, at the very least, potentially in riddles or even enigmatically. I would even go so far to say at some points. Lucy Hale as Melanie Cole, a young woman who was viciously bullied in school. Her fantasy is to humiliate the girl who bullied her when she was younger. Maggie Q as Gwen Olson. She's a businesswoman whose fantasy is to basically undo the regrets of her past. And that means and that basically means accepting a marriage proposal that she turned down a few years previously. Next we got Austin Stowell as Patrick Sullivan. He's a former cop. It's mentioned that he ended up something happened. He ended up behind a desk and then apparently left the police force. His fantasy was to be a soldier. It's also explained why he was not a soldier, or why he didn't just go into the military to begin with. His mother begged him not to enlist. So next up we got Jimmy O. Yang as Brax Weaver and Ryan Henson as J.D. Weaver. They're stepbrothers. It doesn't. This is kind of a thing about a lot of it. Some characters don't really get fleshed out too well, but more on that later. But anyway, the stepbrothers, their fantasy is really just to have it all. And kind of a big thing is, just because you have one idea of the idea being that fantasies don't always play out the way you think they will. So, but they still must play out. Next up, we've got Portia Doubleday as Sloane Madison, who's the woman that bullied Melanie as a child. Michael Rooker as Damon, a mysterious man seen roaming the jungles, the island's jungles. And we got Parisa Fitzhenley as Julia, Mr. Rourke's assistant. Fairly new to the island. I guess the best I can do is everyone shows up to the island. They all get taken to their very, and their fantasies all get catered to them, with the rule being set that you have to rules being set out of one fantasy per guest, and you have to play the fantasy out to its logical conclusion. So, which may not be what you expect, what one expects, basically. So the ups and downs of the movie. Honestly, I thought it was a very interesting and well executed concept to basically, kind of to give fantasy on the concept that hey, be careful what you wish for, and really think about the potential. Think about the consequences of stuff like this, or of wishes, basically. When it comes to the casting, honestly, it's kind of 50-50. Michael Pena and Maggie Q carry every scene they're in. Lucy Hale also is really good as Melanie. And Michael Rooker, he's Michael Rooker, I mean, the man can't turn in a bad performance. But everyone else, they're not bad. They're just not exceptional. It's like you've got, three great talents, one good talent, and you got a handful of just kind of, okay talents. So they don't really get to shine too much. Honestly, there were some genuinely surprising plot points. There were twists in the plot I did not see coming. I'm usually I'll usually come in and honestly, it was kind of predictable, but there were some little things, but overall, it's not too predictable. In broad strokes, sure. The details, though, not so much. On the downside, while small-scale visual effects actually look pretty decent, look pretty good, honestly, the same effects on larger scales don't look as convincing. Let's see. And I would say that about sums that up pretty well, I'd say. So, overall opinion of the movie, like I said, interesting and well executed update of the concept. Now, something I haven't mentioned already, the movie really doesn't rely too much on nostalgia, especially considering you had two television series that have led to that were the inspiration of this. There are some little things. The plane that comes up a few times, but not to a point of, oh hey, we're gonna have a plane reference in 5, 4. There it is. No, it's all of the references are subtle enough that if you know what they were talking about, cool. If you don't, it still works. And like I said, it doesn't rely on nostalgia, which is kind of refreshing. And I would love to see more reboots, or reboots, updates, whatnot, of older franchises that say, okay, well, originally this was in this genre, so let's take it and put it in this genre. Because you know, so you have a lot of similar moving parts. And even with my complaints about the cast, which, like I said, which are not deal breaker complaints at all, just kind of, you know, some could be better, but they're not bad. It's like a decent cast overall, and a pretty solid story. Rating wise, I gotta go with a 3 out of 5. I think it could have been better, but I think that, but there were still just enough things to drag it down, down to the middle of the road. Anywho, no building the team this week, as there's an upcoming sealed event. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. Hit the bell icon to notify when I put new content. And this is Rock and Roll's Box signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.